Our next guest really has a gift putting this all in perspective. A guy I got to know during my days in Congress. I count him as a friend. He is David Horowitz. He is the author of the new book, Take No Prisoners, The Battle Plan for Defeating the Left. David Horowitz, welcome to America's Forum.
Thank you, JD. It's good to be talking to you again. If we had 200 J.D. Hayworths on the Republican side, I wouldn't have had to write this book.
Well, I'm glad you wrote the book. Of course, about a decade ago, you came to us, I believe the name of the book, The Art of Political Warfare, or you set up the dynamics as to how the left approaches an issue politically and how the right oftentimes fails to approach an issue politically.
This book was written out of 20 years of frustration. I mean, here, Mike Tyson once said, everybody has a game plan until you punch them in the mouth. The Democrats have a massive punch in the mouth for Republicans. It's boringly familiar. They use it every election campaign. They use it every day and every minute, every time they open their mouths. The first thing they do is they accuse Republicans of being enemies of women, enemies of children, enemies of the poor, and so forth. What's the Republican response? There is none. What's the Republican punch in the mouth? There is none. This book that I've written, Take No Prisoners, provides the punch, and it's very obvious. First of all, you turn the Democrat guns around them. They've shown that it's very effective to call people racists. It stops them, it gets them stuttering and shuffling, and nobody then is going to listen to their message. Democrats, first of all, Democrats are the racist party. They're the party of slavery, of segregation, and of racial categories. In the 60s, the Civil Rights Act eliminated racial categories from all federal legislation and regulations. Since then, the Democrats have, of course, restored them. We have racial categories for hiring, racial categories for getting into colleges, and so forth, and it goes on and on and on.
Well, let's transfer this to the here and now, David, with the debate over the border. And there are the Democrats lining up. Of course, the Republicans are down in conference because they're the majority party. They have to govern. What is your take on the border situation? Go ahead.
How racist is it to lure Hispanic children without their parents into the United States, 65,000 of them, and let them fend for themselves? That's racist. Why don't Republicans use that word? Every major city in America, every single one, is 100% controlled by Democrats and has been for 50 to 100 years. Every inner city in America of any size, Democrats have destroyed the lives of tens of millions of poor Black and Hispanic children by trapping them in schools that don't teach them because they're run for the left-wing teacher unions. The schools don't teach them and they can't get out, whereas Democratic legislators, they send their kids to private schools that will teach them. It's a social atrocity. Republicans never mention it. Why aren't they holding their convention in Detroit, which is the symbol of everything or the evil that the Democratic Party does when there's no Republicans to stop them?
And as you mentioned that, we saw the disintegration of Detroit, but also as a historical reference point, that was the place where Ronald Reagan was nominated in 1980. The Reagan approach was a nod of the head, a twinkle of the eye, and there you go again, a kind of gentle humor.
That's okay for the president.
Right.
It's not okay for everybody else.
Understood. And this gets back to part of the process, though, in Washington. In addition to the Democrats and their use of incendiary language, you also have a press corps that by and large believes its highest duty is to serve as cheerleaders, or at the very least as facilitators for that kind of extreme message. So how do Republicans break through that?
If Republicans start calling Democrats racist and throwing in their face these poor kids that they've trapped into schools, or the single mothers whom they've seduced into lives of permanent poverty and bribed with $200 to have children after child after child after child so they can earn a pittance and condemn all those kids to poverty. If Republicans would open their mouths and start attacking the Democrats the way the Democrats attack them, the press would be neutralized. What is the press going to say?
Well, they would have to cover it, and it would definitely perhaps change the debate. But David, in the 2 minutes remaining in this part of our discussion, you also know what happens that gives a lot of my former colleagues pause. The press corps views any strident counter remark offered by Republicans as evidence of being, quote, either an extremist or, in my own personal case, the leftist newspaper and open borders tome known as the Arizona Republic characterized me as a bully and went after me and saying I didn't deserve re-election.
JD, you brought up Ronald Reagan. Ronald Reagan didn't give a damn what the Washington Post and the New York Times said, and that liberated him. Yes, we're all going to carry wounds and scars, and we're going to be tarred and feathered. But if we keep talking the truth, and if the truth sets the Democrats on their heels, we can win.
Well, as I listen to this, David Horowitz, I appreciate it. Let's take a look at the cover of the new book again. While we have David here, I want to mention that new book one more time. There it is, Take No Prisoners. And we're not going to take David off the air. We're just going to pause, because when we return, David and I will be joined by a self-described progressive. We would call him a denizen of the left, but still an interesting guy to talk to. Josh Orton will join us again from Madison, Wisconsin. We will talk about what the president and the Democrats have in mind in terms of handling Wisconsin Governor Scott Walker. All of that is ahead. Our discussion continues as we add a voice from the left, America's Forum, right here on Newsmax TV. And of course, we love your comments too. Why don't you tweet us your comments at Newsmax TV, #America's Forum. There's also newsmaxtv.com/comment.